Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And this year, my goodness, we have had so many incredible conversations with thought leaders all around the world. And we're going to continue to pull that thread, especially as we're looking to plan for the year ahead. And what we're simplifying today is how to build a talent strategy that actually thrives in uncertainty. And this is no small topic. So I needed to get you a powerhouse speaker today. And that person is Steve Cadigan. He's a globally renowned talent strategist and advisor, and he's sought after by leaders and organizations all around the world. Client roster included Airbnb, Salesforce, the BBC, and more. He's a speaker and educator, and he presents at global conferences and teaches at leading universities. And hey, guess what? Before he founded his firm in 2013, he also spent 25 years as an HR executive at industry-leading companies like Cisco and Electronic Arts. He also was LinkedIn's first Chief Human Resources Officer, where he helped grow the company from a private startup to 400 employees to a powerhouse of a company global. I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Steve Cadigan. Hey, Steve.
Hi, great to be here.
I'm so thrilled you're here. You and I met at the beginning of 2025 through Dallas HR, and then later you were the closing keynote over at the HR Southwest conference. Well done. How was that experience for you?
It was wonderful. It's wonderful. For me, it's always great to get a pulse from so many different industries and perspectives and layers in an organization. And HR Southwest was just chock full of really great insights.
My goodness, it is a brilliant conference. It's based in Fort Worth, Texas, usually has anywhere from 1,800 to 2,000 folks attend. And you know what I like about these conferences, as you said, having a finger on the pulse, but simple, practical tips that people can take away to make change. And let's face it, being an HR professional right now, not a great job to have. It's a toughie, especially with the market being as uncertain as it is, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. I would say it is the greatest time to be in HR because it is so messy and unpredictable. And we've never been in a time where the talent strategy and quality talent strategy is in greater demand than right now.
Yeah. So that's what I want to talk about and go deep on. With everything feeling unpredictable, what does a resilient talent strategy actually look like today, in your opinion?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to build a culture that embraces the expectation that we're not striving for normalcy or we're not striving for stability. We want a culture that can adapt quickly. And that's a superpower in a world where new competitors can come out of the woodwork faster than any time in history. We need new skills in our workforce faster than any time in history. We have rising turnover. We have more people wanting a career pivot because they can see what's possible to a much greater extent than any time in history. So that would be, for me, if I were to say, hey, what's one lever that I should focus on to bring a little bit more, confidence that I'm preparing my organization, my leadership, the best way I can for an uncertain future. That is, make sure we're not talking about culture in terms of foundation and pillars. Those are immovable terms. Those are terms connoting we're not going to change. And that's counter to what we need today. We need, new ideas and new perspectives and new capabilities. And so let's think about in how we're talking to people, how we're framing career paths, how we're framing job families, compensation packages. Are we building those in a way that prepares us for quick movement and agility? And those, I think, are really important. And we touch that in HR more than any other organization in an organization, correct?
Yeah, totally. And, let me just throw out some really jarring facts. In Q4 2025, specifically in the month of October, 153,000 jobs were announced as layoffs in the US alone. 153,000. And by that point, at the end of October, I think the total is right around 750,000 since January 1. So layoffs are a thing. That's not anything new, but it certainly seems like layoffs are happening more and more. And what the interesting part about it is that, saying the quiet thing out loud, some of the companies that did massive layoffs in the month of October have never been more profitable. So I think there's an interesting nuance to that, in that it's not companies going, yikes, profits down, let's cut people. It's profits up and let's still get lean. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel that this moment is really challenging for leaders on so many dimensions, but I think the main ingredient to the decision process around let's reduce headcount even though profits are up is this crazy artificial intelligence tsunami that's hit us. It's something that we think about more than anything else and know less than anything else. It's something that even CEOs are like they're cramming for a final test. They don't know what it all means. And I think boards and investors and private equity and venture investors are saying, you need to use AI, you need to use AI. And so I think they're quickly thinking like, well, that must mean, I got to replace some headcount with AI. And I think that's such a huge mistake. And I've put out article after podcasts on, if you're replacing people with AI. McKinsey just published recently, I think it was like the end of Q3, beginning of Q4, a
Yes.
study. It's called the State of the Union of AI 2025. And here's their finding, okay? Their finding is that only 6% of companies that are deploying AI, and they think something around 69% of companies are playing around with AI trying to figure it out. Only 6% are seeing a measurable difference in their profits. And that is and those firms, what they're doing is they're enhancing their talent with AI. They're not replacing it. They're recognizing that this is giving your talent superpowers, and that when companies are trying to replace talent with AI, they're seeing really poor results. Now, might that change in the future? We don't know, but that's really interesting. And so I think organizations, leaders are moving ahead too fast, thinking, oh, I guess the quickest way that we can cut is let's leverage AI and try to cut people. And we're seeing example after example. And Klarna is the greatest example recently. Oh, we're going to cut 400 customer service jobs, destroying their relationship with their customers, giving them a poor customer experience, falling on their sword about 6 months later going, our bad, that was not a good call. And so I don't blame them for seeking optimization. But the big trap I think that people are falling into with AI is they're using it to fix the bottom and not grow the top. And that's where the growth is. That's where, don't you want a bigger business? I mean, we've always used technology to try to, cut costs, to try to go faster and do more. And that's how we're thinking about AI. And I think that's the wrong trap to fall in. I think it's like, how can I supercharge my team? How can I, for example, I work a lot with universities around the world, and I have, 4 college-age kids right now. And they're looking at a job market where internships are disappearing. Nobody's responding to their hundreds of applications they submit. And they're starting to ask, like, if my first interaction with organizations is ghosting, is bot responses that I'm getting that are not recognizing me, is that even a path I want to pursue? And think about that for a second. If we're going to try to cut out entry-level jobs because of AI, and those are not even numbers that are showing up as headcount cuts, but they're getting cut to dramatic fashion. Even the Wall Street Journal published an article not long ago that said, hey, the class of 2026 is facing the worst, fewest amount of opportunities in the last 3 decades. And so, what are my kids thinking? My kids are thinking, I better start my own business, because I don't think that that's a path I want to necessarily go down. And that's, I think, very short-sighted for organizations. Like, what's the future look like if we don't hire entry-level talent? Like, who's going to grow these people?
Where is your pipeline? Yeah. Where is your pipeline of talent? And this is the thing. And we've all heard these studies a million times over. To find, recruit, scout, hire, onboard, and retain outside talent into your company costs so much more money than in simply looking internally inside your pipeline of talent, existing employees inside. It's a lot more efficient of a process, and also costs a lot less to ramp up a person into a next role. But I think companies have got it all backwards right now. And I want to put a pin on something you said earlier. Customer experience. Klarna, my goodness. They made a big bet thinking AI was going to solve for customer service. It didn't work out. And the customer experience is what got hit. And so I have a firm belief. Here is my hypothesis. You have to reframe everything. And this goes into talent strategy. And I'm super curious to see what your thoughts are on it. My hypothesis is this. What if instead you focused on improving better employee experience, right? You actually develop your internal staff, you give them the tools and equip them, empower them to do the very best work of their lives. Hey, they're going to want to show up at work. They're going to want to do a great job. Better employee experience equals better customer experience, which in the end equals a more profitable business. That's the framework for the years ahead. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's a great frame. I completely agree with you. I think one of the reasons why organizations are missing it is because of all this pressure that they're
Mm.
getting, go, 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 AI, 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 and that they're not taking their time to think about it. So I'll give you two examples of CEO statements that have, hit the news not long ago. One, CEO of Accenture, okay? She came on and said, listen, the future's AI. We've been, we've put the task to our employees. You better figure out AI. You better ramp up, or we're going to put you on a ramp out. Okay. And I thought that was so fascinating. That's sort of like, you're on your own, employee. We might have hired you, but now that you're here, you got to figure this out. And we're not going to give you a playbook. We're just going to tell you, go figure it out. How, how disappointing a perspective for an organization that many people look to for, oh, come in and help our culture, help us grow. That's how you're treating your own people. I think that's a huge miss. On the other side, you have the Walmart CEO coming out and saying, listen, he said, I can't see how every job's not going to be impacted in some way by AI. However, I'm making a commitment right now that we are going to keep our headcount flat for the next 3 years. Now, if you're sitting in Walmart and you hear that, that's very different than if you're sitting in Accenture and hearing like, well, good luck swimming, figure it out. Figure what out? I don't know, go figure it out. And that's, those very two different perspectives. So I completely agree with you. If you want to win in the future, your value is going to be created by your people. If you start coming out of the gate saying we're going to use AI to eliminate headcount, what message are you sending? Versus we're going to leverage AI so that our entry level people come in as intermediates. We can skip the entry level. Let's not hire them. Let's bring them up at a higher level. And by the way, is the youth that is entering the workforce more fluent with AI, or is our existing workforce more fluent in AI? I would bet on this generation that survived education during COVID, that saw their teachers struggle, try to teach through Zoom, that didn't know what they were doing, that saw their parents working from home and struggling. This is the most resilient class of students we have ever graduated. They are the more adaptable than anything. And if you believe what all these management consulting firms say, that, hey, that's the most important skill that every leader is looking for today is adaptability. Well, why are you ignoring that then? Why are you cutting all those positions? You're going to, severely compromise your capacity to be adaptable. So that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, Mary, I agree with your thesis. Yeah.
Yeah. And leadership development is a major piece of showing your employees that you care and saying, hey, this is where we are now, and this is where we're headed next. And these are the skills that we want to empower you and upskill you in. And I think that's part of that talent strategy as a whole. Yes, there's a piece of skills and talent that come from the outside that we want to make sure that we are attracting as a brand to bring the right talent in to help us innovate and get us to where we want to go. But I think leadership development is a key to that. So let's talk about adaptability. Let's actually break that down even further because, that can be seen as like, well, yes, okay, we're all adapt. Sure, right? We're nimble. But what does that actually mean? How can leaders build cultures where uncertainty becomes an advantage and not a threat, truly to be agile as an organization?
Yeah, I think that's really, really a highly variable answer depending upon your culture. Have you already built a culture of experimentation? Have you already built an environment where people are not fearful of taking risk? And I will tell you, a lot of businesses that are in the space of high regulatory environment or medical practices or pharmaceuticals where you cannot make a mistake, the level of experimentation bleeds into your culture where it's like, we're going to be very conservative with our product development. We're probably going to be pretty conservative with our talent development, pretty conservative with how we think about people strategy. Having worked with many healthcare associations around the world, especially the United States in the last 2 years, working with a number of hospital facilities, working with a number of pharma companies, working with a number of banks. We're talking about you don't have a free reign to go do whatever you want to do, and you've got a whole legacy of governance that you've got to be really mindful for. That makes it really, really hard. So my recommendation is, listen, no one really understands how this AI is going to best be optimized. It's going to require some experimentation. That doesn't mean everyone has to go out and play around in the sandbox. Start with the area where an experiment that goes wrong has minimal damage. Start with a place where you have a bunch of people who have a high receptivity to trying something new. You all know this, Mary, from our days, working in organizations. You know who the leaders are that are early adopters, that are trying stuff, that are taking bold moves. Go over there and say, hey, we need to chalk up some wins here with AI to build our confidence as an organization that we're doing this the right way. The second thing is, I really think that the greatest cultures that are going to thrive in this world of AI are the ones that start by talking to their employees and saying, what worries you about a future that's filled with AI? Let's start with all the objections. Instead of just start driving the bus saying, figure out AI, like, why? So you can eliminate my job? Like there's so many fears right now, and that's not the right environment. And I think, we've all worshiped from the altar of Brene Brown, like psychological safety and being in an environment where trust is really high. That's super important right now. So I would strongly urge people, ask yourself, what is your trust strategy? Stop measuring employee engagement and start measuring employee trust. Because if you have the trust, then you've got the capacity to feel comfortable experimenting, right?
I'm so glad you said that.
Very
That
foundational.
is everything right now, especially if your company has gone through any recent rounds of layoffs, because I can go ahead and guarantee you right now, trust is low in the departments that were impacted, because it's like, yikes, am I next? You don't feel safe. Even if you were what I would call a survivor, somebody who got to keep their job, but now gets two jobs for the price of one. Hooray. Your trust in your senior leadership and executives is probably at an all-time low. Employee listening is everything. Truly having a team, and if you don't have a team, find some outside support to help you conduct really focused employee listening surveys, focus groups, coffee with the CEO, et cetera, to really get at the heart of what's broken inside your business and also where the opportunities are. And I think that's where you move away from anecdotal, right? I heard a story from Karen in finance that said blah, 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 and this is what's not right. And before you make massive investments into new AI software or new other things, you're actually doing it based on evidence. What are your people saying is where we need to focus and where we need to improve, and potentially looking at some of the ideas that they're putting forth and saying, hey, here's a quick win, or here's a longer term strategy that would help us get from where we are now to where we want to go next.
Let me share a story on this, because I think you're hitting on something super important, and it's so simple to do, to listen actively, to set up brown bags, to set up skip level meetings. When we were building LinkedIn and we doubled our employee population in every year for the 4 years I was there, okay? We doubled the number of countries that we entered every year. We doubled the number of offices that we entered, and we doubled our revenue. And it was a crazy, you can't even imagine how crazy it is. Unless you've been through hyper growth like that, you don't even know. It is impossible. The minute you hire someone, they have to redo the processes that you just finished spending 6 months building, yesterday. And so it's really, really hard. So one of the things that we found was, as soon as we would, onboard maybe 200-300 people, all of a sudden these myths started rising. These narratives started building, like you mentioned, like, oh, we're a big company now, things are really slow. Oh, we have too many meetings. Oh, this email, death by 1,000 emails. Like, what, this isn't going right. And what the poison is that starts to develop in your system is this momentum, this myth, this belief that I am now a victim of something that I have no control over, that I'm no longer an active contributor in this organization. I'm now some victim of some huge monolith that's being created that's making me feel less significant. And that is just poison. So the CEO and I started doing listening tours to teams all over the world. And we would sit there and say, what's working well in the organization right now? Do you feel really good about? We want to make sure we continue those things. What one or two things do you think are not working so well that we need to pay attention to? And we would hear these things like, hey, we hired too many people from Yahoo. Look at that company. It's a disaster. And I would say to myself, well, maybe you forgot that our CEO came from Yahoo, and that's another story. Like what's happening? Oh, well, that company's culture went down and the revenues went down and they're bringing their bad practices over here. And so we would say, well, that's funny because ever since we hired those 200 people from Yahoo the last 2 years, our revenues doubled, our engagement scores have risen, and our results, to goals have increased. So where's the depth behind your narrative? Where's that coming from? And they go, oh, well, let's talk about something else. So we have too many meetings. So the CEO literally said, then stop having meetings. I never told you to have meetings. If you think you can operate differently, don't meet. And then they said, oh, too many emails. He said, stop sending emails. Nobody wants emails. Why are you sending emails? And that was such a head spinner for everyone in that room when he was saying these things like, oh, you mean I can control my capacity to communicate in person? Yes, you can. And that is one of the big, moments when you're in high velocity change, which many organizations are in right now, investing in, course correcting, debunking myths. And that was almost a full-time job for me for a good year and a half of hyper growth, was debunking myths, going, no, that's not true. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, we're relocating this team to North Carolina. No, we're not. Where did you hear that from? It's just not true.
Yeah.
And I'll get the head of manufacturing to come in here right now. And so, because that's really distracting, and I think when you start doing that again and again, you start building a recognition among the believers that, yeah, I don't believe the leaders are going to do that. If they start hearing something and so then then myths get quashed earlier in the funnel. You see what I'm saying? When you continually to knock them down. Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that up. And employee listening is never a one and done. Oh, I can tick that off the checklist. It is a conversation, two ways, back and forth over time. And put very simply, you said this, we did this. And it's a closed loop that helps rebuild that trust in your senior leadership. Not every idea that comes to the table will get actioned, but when you start to have that trust built in that closed loop with continual employee listening, done well, done right, then you can, to your point, clarify what should we stop doing? What should we start doing? And what should we continue? I mean, that's the simplest way that you can say it. And then, like you said, debunking the myths helps get the noise out of the room and just focus on the North Star. What is it that we're going after?
And I want HR leaders on this, in the audience to really listen to this, because it took me a while to appreciate this. One of the reasons many leaders are resistant to an employee survey is not because they want to hear, is because their interpretation is, I'm going to have an action list of more stuff to do out of this. And I'm not sure I can fulfill my daily obligations as is. Why do I want to add more to the plate? And that's where I came from. Okay, wrong, leaders. That's the wrong way to think about this. This is not more work for you. And by the way, sometimes if we listen and we say no, we build loyalty. So I'll give you another example. One of the surveys we did one time at LinkedIn came back with anger from our San Francisco employees that we don't have a shuttle to and from San Francisco and Mountain View, where our headquarters was. And on a good day, it's 45 minutes. On a bad day, it's 2 hours. That's 2 hours from dinner. It's 2 hours from your kids, 2 hours from your friends and your family, or someone else is hanging out with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, and it's not you for that time. So, okay, so I said, all right, tell you what, that's showing up from a lot of people. So I will go do the research. So I did the research. The research showed that we had a minority of staff in San Francisco. We had more people in further locations, but more spread out. Okay, it wasn't as dense as San Francisco. That the cost of putting 2 shuttles a day in the morning and the evening was $250,000. That all our neighboring companies that had shuttles were not going to agree to us sharing the shuttle because they were worried about proprietary information slipping out. Okay, I don't want to mention any names, Google. But so we had to, we looked at all this. So I invited everyone in for a town hall. I said, we heard you. Here is the scattergram of where all of our employees live. What do you notice? They go, oh, we're a small minority. A very loud minority, but yes, you're a small minority. Do you see how many other people are further away? Would it be fair to offer you this benefit and not everyone else? Do you see that this costs us $250,000 to do this? Do you believe that's the best use of the company money? I didn't come out and say no. I said, do you believe that's the best use? They said, no. Thank you so much for looking into this.
Yeah.
Boom. It wasn't more
Instead
work,
of,
you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
instead of ignoring it and instead of not saying anything, what I hear in what you just said, and thank you for sharing that story, is transparency. Transparency does show that you are hearing people, you're investigating that as a possibility and saying yes or no or not right now with data, with strategy behind it, really assessing what's possible and what makes most sense for the majority. And this is all talent strategy, you guys. This is very much part of that because, I kind of think about like old world recruiting and retention playbooks that many old kind of companies still use. Like, what would you say to those folks in particular? Like, to stop doing immediately, and what should they replace it with?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, listen, you know how I feel about this because you've heard me talk on this before. Probably the biggest, I think, misfire for us right now is the entire architecture of HR benefits and comp was all built for rewarding people to stay longer. And
Mm,
everyone knows people in most professions are not staying longer. Okay. They're just not. So we've got 401k matching. We've got more vacation the longer you're with us. We've got more, tuition reimbursement kicks in at deeper levels the longer you stay with us. Is that the best use of our money versus can we upskill people whether or not they stay with us? Can we make this the greatest, deepest, most meaningful learning journey of anyone's career? And even if someone goes, they're going to be an angel for us. They're going to be an ambassador. They're going to send all their friends here because they had such a rich learning experience. And we can't believe in a world of almost infinite career path choice today compared to a few years ago. We can't believe people are just going to stay. That's a buffet of opportunity, especially technical talent. So let's start thinking about how can we optimize creating value and re-architect our rewards that really, in a way, up levels people really fast and keeps in touch with them when they leave so that they can be ambassadors for us. And that's, to me, that's much bigger thinking. And a great company example of that is Chick-fil-A, who on their career website embraces and celebrates people who left for something that they really wanted to do, but appreciated that Chick-fil-A helped them get there. That, hey, we're fast food. We don't expect we're going to be the dream destination for everyone. We're fast food, but we want to be the best part of your journey, however long that is. And, in the fast food industry, a good year is 400% turnover. Okay. Most of us sitting in white collar, HR jobs, like, let's keep it to 6 to 10, 400%, which means if you keep someone keep them 5 months instead of 4, that's massive because you don't have the training, the onboarding, the churn in your cycle of service to your customers. And that's meaningful. So by doing that, they're saying we care about you for your whole career, not just when you work for us. That's
mm.
another ingredient when you ask me, Murray, how should I rethink my talent strategy? Care about people for their whole career. Really think about how can I build value knowing people aren't going to stay as long? How can I reward them differently, right? How can I come up with maybe instead of a 401k plan that's dependent on you being here, that carries with you, that goes with you. And if you come back, it's even more meaningful. But, I think we're going to start measuring companies in the future, not by how long people stay, but by how many people come back because
Yeah.
their grass is so green oh my God, I can see more of what I don't have as an employee. I can see what other people have more than any time in history. So people are going to go taste. But if they go and then they go, oh, I didn't appreciate how great the culture was or my boss was or this, and they come back, well, that's a huge win, right? And I think we're starting to see more and more of that play out.
I think that's so smart because boomerang employees are very powerful for you, especially if they're choosing to come back. That means they see something in the products, the services, the culture, the people in your organization, and they're coming back with new skills, new
Mhm.
ideas, new innovation that they've seen, whether it was done really well by a competitor or maybe not done very well at all, and coming back and helping you innovate. I had read a stat recently that said that Gen Z in the US spend on average 1.7 years in a job, either by their own choice or not because of layoffs and et cetera. So you're absolutely right. If you're telling me I'm vested in 5 years and, this perk kicks in at the 10-year mark, I'm never going to make it because
I'm just
I'm
hearing
not
blah, blah, blah. It's not
I'm
really,
not
really exciting.
guaranteed that you'll even have a job for me in 10 years now. So those things are not perks. They're just, carrots that are dangled so far away that are not even, seen as a benefit.
Right, right. It's true. And the more the early in career workforce starts hearing CEOs talk about those employees, not our employees, those people who are not learning AI fast, like that's really not, I don't think, inviting them to want to play ball
No.
and to want to see. And I think that the real strength and the muscle that trust can bring to help you get the best people. And this is the magic, the magic story from my experience at LinkedIn. And it's 12 years dated, but I still think it has enormous merit. Was here's a company whose main product was recruiting, and we were struggling recruiting. Okay, our main product to sell was a recruiting product, and we were struggling to recruit, and we couldn't pay what other competitors for talent in Silicon Valley could pay. Our benefits weren't anywhere near because we weren't making as much profit. Google made more money in a day than we did in a year for most of the time that I worked there. They made more money in a day. And so my employees would go to their friends' lunch at Google and say, how come why don't we have a childcare center? Why don't we have a sushi chef? And go, bro, you make the money that they're making over here, then I will get you all that stuff. But we just can't afford it, right? And but what we did was we made our culture a competitive advantage. And when you do that, and we said, this is going to be the greatest part of your career journey. You're going to learn more here, make a difference more than anywhere else. When you do that, you don't have to recruit as hard because the great people will find you. Okay. And that's how you win the war for recruiting. It's not by some ninja LinkedIn campaign. It's by being the place the best people want to be. Right. And that takes time. There's no shortcuts there. Right. I spent a decade talking to leaders around the world. What was the secret? The secret was there is no secret. The secret was be a great place to work. And then the great people will find you, and that means all your leaders got to say, you got to look each other in the eye and say, we might not be able to pay people what other companies can, but we will for sure deliver the greatest career experience you've ever had. And that costs you nothing but commitment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Putting intention into your strategy of the entire employee life cycle, which you're absolutely right, includes offboarding, alumni networks, how you keep in touch with people after they've left. I mean, I think
Right.
about it, I kind of call these lily pad roles, ones that you bounce onto. You don't really know how long you're going to be inside this role or inside this organization. But if I feel like my company is committed to helping me develop, no matter how long I'm here, I'm a lot more committed to helping them achieve their goals and to deliver a great customer experience. When there is no feeling like the company is pouring into me in any way, shape, or form, who is the role model for that person in the company for them to go anywhere above and beyond with the customer, right? You need to see it modeled inside your organization. Hey, like Chick-fil-A, we're going to develop you. We're going to give you training. We're going to give you tuition reimbursement. Now, we know that you're only here for a second and moving on. That changes the dynamic between employer and employee, right?
It does. And it's an honest, real conversation. That's one of the reasons I wrote my book, is because I was frustrated of seeing organization after organization start the employee relationship with a false foundation. You commit to stay here a long time and we'll commit to employ you a long time. We both know we probably won't live up to that, but let's start with a false understanding of how this relationship is going to work. Instead of, hey, when you leave here, what do you want to go do? What do you want to be doing?
Yeah.
Which sort of frees up the conversation. And that's how we used to recruit at LinkedIn. It's like we're Silicon Valley. We know you're going to go. The median tenure for software engineers is 1.2 years. So we know you're going to go. What can we make sure you are better at and prepared for when you leave? Okay. Because we want to be your champion for your whole journey. We're LinkedIn. We are the professional network. We want to have, we want to be clear that this is the greatest place for your professional journey. And that's, again, it's a simple commitment, but most organizations won't do that because they'll ask the very crusty old question, well, why would I develop my people if they're going to go? Like, why would I do that? And the answer is, well, what if you don't and they stay? And they're going to
Yes.
go. They are just going to go. Don't you want them to be angels for you out there in the talent universe, right?
Yeah. And, ultimately, don't you want to be doing world class work? Accepting sort of a C minus mediocrity in your workplace is never good for anybody. Certainly not for the
Right.
employee who feels like no one's investing in them. Certainly not for the customer who's sort of getting a stale experience at best, a solid C minus. That doesn't, instill any sort of loyalty on any side.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
This is a really hard moment. It's easy for us to go, hey, leaders, you're asleep at the wheel. The truth is, there's more pressure on leaders, there's more pressure on HR right now, more pressure on talent. We have more new challenges than we've ever faced before. I mean, we haven't talked about it yet, but we're still in the midst of the pajama revolution. People saying I'm much more productive at home than I am in an office. And so we still, have a big challenge to work through with a lot of our employees, right?
So let's take this as our final question. What could you give as one piece of advice to HR business leaders that are listening to us right now, that especially in this volatile talent market, what's one thing that they should be really focused on when they're thinking about their strategic plan for the year ahead?
I think start playing offense instead of defense. Start expecting more fluidity and start saying, how can I re-architect work so it doesn't require someone to, take 3 years to learn how to do this, right?
Mm.
Expect, building knowledge transfer. Maybe a job that takes 3 years for someone to learn, maybe split that into two. So it takes two people 6 months to figure out the portion that they have, right? That's what I would do. That's playing offense, right? If you have someone leave and you go, oh, Susan left. Oh my gosh, she's the only one that knows how to do X, Y, Z. Well, that's on you because you knew Susan was going to go, right? And we used to have regular conversations with our top talent saying, how are you doing? Are you feeling challenged? Are you feeling like this is taking you in the direction you want to be going? Is there anything that we should know? And if we had a superstar like, I think I'm going to go, we're like, okay, can we support you? Can we invest in you? Can we provide you mentorship or in some cases funding, right? That keeps them in the ecosystem rather than the Tony Soprano school of HR, which is you quit, you're dead to me. Like you're out, oh, 3 weeks notice. No, tomorrow's your last day. That's just not feasible. So play offense, not defense. I think retention, I want my best people, but I think you're naive if you really go all in on retention right now and you focus more on let's retain our relationship with people for the entirety of their career.
Mm, so good, Steve. If you guys are curious about the work that Steve does out in the world, I highly recommend head over to our show notes, thesimplifiers.com. You'll find all the links to everything that we've talked about, all the articles and reports and such. But you also find links to Steve, his LinkedIn, his TikTok, and as well, you've got a podcast, Workquake Weekly. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started this probably about 3 months ago. The thought of doing a podcast episode every week was like, repulsing me at first. Like, oh no, I can't commit to that. My manager came up with a methodology that we used. It's 5 minutes. It's not me with any guest. It's just take a couple of articles, topics that people are wrestling with that just feel hard and gnarly and try to unpack them for people. And it's been real fun. So it's super simple, super easy. But we talk about how CEOs are thinking about AI with their talent strategy. We talk about the lack of trust causing all kinds of issues. We talk about a lot of the misstarts with AI implementations and so forth. So yeah, I hope the listeners will check it out.
Love it. We will link that all up in the show notes over thesimplifiers.com. And, a lot of what we talked about today is companies desperately needing someone to teach their workforce the basics on using AI. Just a reminder to you guys out there, that's what the Simplifiers does. Part of the work and workshops that we provide is literally breaking it down, simplifying down, using, generational AI, things like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and how you can scale that across your organization. So make sure to go to our website as well. We'll show you the links to it. So, Steve, a couple of things. We like to ask these questions as we wrap up to all of our guests, and here they go, rapid fire. First,
Great.
what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
The book that I'm thinking of right now that I'm wrestling around with, it's one of those books I listen to books. I don't read them as much anymore. And because I can knock out walking the dogs too. But Conscious Business by Fred Kaufman has just exploded my brain and challenged me And I'll just leave one of the comments that Fred says in his book, which is, why do we talk about, work-life balance? Does that mean we're not living when we're working? I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a great, like, we're living more. I tell this to my kids, I love what I do. I feel more alive when I'm working than as much as anything that I do. So that's very much living. And so that's just, as we try to make sense of a very confusing world that we live in right now, he's Argentinian, and it's his voice. He's speaking about the book, and he's just such a soothing, comforting, wise person. Yeah, I really love listening to Fred. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love it. We will link that in the show notes for you guys. Again, thesimplifiers.com. Tell us, who's one person, somebody in your network that you know personally that you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
I came across a phenomenal woman working in the sort of the early phases of her HR journey, named Ntua Adina. She's in Rwanda, and she, I think, I don't know, I've been doing some work on a board in Africa called the Boardroom Africa, and through that connection, I've met a lot of the rising stars on the continent. And the Boardroom Africa is all about helping women get to board positions in Africa. And so I paired up with Ntua, and we have been mentoring each other for probably a year now. And I have learned so much about her and that part of the world, and have so much awe for the challenges that she's taking on, and trying to say, you need to get your words out there so people know what you're doing. So check out Ntua Adia. She is someone worth following, 100%.
Love it. If you guys are curious about her and the work that she's doing, again, head over to our show notes. You'll find a link to go back to her. I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
Today, I'm grateful for being able to do what I love, when I want, and how I want, and that I have been able to put myself in a position. I think that's the ultimate career success: doing what you want, when you want, with who you want. And the joy that I have of working in different countries with different people in different industries is just so rewarding for me. I didn't know, I wasn't sure how long I was going to be working, and this is definitely, I see an infinite runway in front of me. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that.
Well, Steve, you do come to the table with so much practical advice. I've seen you speak a few times now, and you do an incredible work at the work you do. So keep doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So my final question for you is this: someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and maybe they have been tasked by their CEO, hey, you got to figure out our talent strategy. And that's it. They've been given no information, no resources, really going, how in the world am I going to figure this out? What's one thing you could whisper in their ear right now just to encourage them in this moment?
This is not your job to figure out. This is your job to help the leadership team figure out. If you think that's your job exclusively, you are just going to dig yourself a big, deep hole. The best work you do in HR is not because you're smart. It's not because you know more HR than anyone else. It's because you corral your leaders to co-pilot this with you. So pull together, start with the people who are the early believers, early adopters, who are the people like, that they get it. They're great leaders and they want to be part of this. And start working with them and build your base from there. Don't run away into some hole and say, here's my master plan, which you're building in a silo. And just really, I've made that mistake too many times. And every time I've involved more people, it's been so much more effective.
Steve, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.